we could use the sunlight.
There are a few things I would like to say about the canto titled The House of the Spirit and the New Creation, which will be concluded. Having read this canto maybe 100 times in the last 30 or 40 years, I'm beginning to see some things which I hadn't seen before. One thing is that it is a perfect example of the cycle or the wheel around which these teachings turn. Because it says in the first section, the athlete heavings of the will were stilled. In the omnipotence unmoving peace, life in his members lay down, vast and mute. Naked, unwalled, unterrified, it bore the immense regard of immortality. The last movement died, and all at once grew still. A weight that was the unseen transcendent's hand laid on his limbs the Spirit's measureless seal. Infinity swallowed him into shoreless trance. And so we have an image of the absolute surrender to the void, the one, beyond life and mind. And this is a recapitulation of the two cantos that came just before this one. The first canto of Book 3 is the total description of the total self-abnegation and surrender. And the second canto is the response by the Divine Mother who descends into the yogi's surrendered being and reverses or transforms that emptiness into an absolute affirmation of the divine force. Now in this third canto, that same sequence is recapitulated in the first part. And this is the theme of the teaching of Savitri that recurs, as we have said, throughout the work. But then, what follows is unique. The realization which comes through this surrender, in this case, is a descent from that absolute witness self into a higher region of the mind, or perhaps overmind, or some. It's not a descent into life and body, those remain totally abandoned. But in the consciousness of the yogi, there is a realization that is described in great detail that seems to me to be prophetic.
God, so.
But it's prophetic in a way that is immediate. It's not only prophetic of a distant possibility, but it strikes me now that it is prophetic of a range of consciousness that is reachable. That the realization of the liberated witness self, that is the first movement, and that is also the teaching of the Samatha and Sapta Chatusthaya, is followed almost immediately by this Chandi Bhava, this experience of the divine in everything. And so in the Sapta Chatusthaya that we've just been hearing about, in the Shakti Chatusthayam, the Shakti Chatusthayam is made up of Virya, Shakti, Chandi Bhava or Daivi Prakriti, and Shraddha. And Shraddha is translated roughly as faith. But if we take this canto to be a strong indication of what is actually possible as a result of yoga, then it awakens in us a kind of shraddha, a kind of faith that is active, that is inspired. It's not a blind faith, it's a specific possibility that's shown. And if one sees that, then that activates the shraddha of this particular chatusthayam in a way that I think is real, that is especially meaningful. Then the Virya, Shakti, Daivi Prakriti, Shraddha become a perfection of the soul oriented towards a specific possible realization of the divine in life. And that's really the substance of Shraddha. He says we have to believe that the divine really does turn evil into good, and that our defeats really are steps towards victory. And if we had this vision that is articulated in this canto, then that would be a seeing that would be normal. It wouldn't just be a blind faith, it would be an active faith in a process of consciousness that was our own reality. So that's how I'm seeing this canto now, not so much as a prophetic of a distant future possibility, but prophetic of a possibility that is within the range of the yogic experience. Not necessarily in the range of the evolutionary process of humanity, but that's not what we're talking about anyway. We are talking about Yoga Sutra here.
But eventually, yes, I mean,
Eventually,
evolution is leading to that.
We can, if we see this vision, then we can believe that evolution is leading to that.
Yes.
But that's not the point. The point is that it's a yogic. The point is that it's a yogic development, and until we achieve that, the future evolution is on the shelf. It isn't going to happen without certain processes. it also seems to me that what is described here is a kind of intensity of oneness and beauty and harmony that must actually already exist. Our consciousness is a consciousness of illusion. But if the supermind is the basis of everything, then the transformation of consciousness would be something that enables us to see a reality that is in fact already present. From the yogic standpoint, this idea that is articulated of the total self-giving to all by the individual and the total identification with the all and the beauty and power in that realization seem to me to be the seed of every kind of idealism that already exists in the human mind. When the human mind talks about some perfected state of society, it seems that it's actually intuiting a reality that's already existing. It's just that we don't see it and we don't manifest it outwardly because of our transitional evolutionary state. And so these ideas seem to be seeds of a reality that can be realized, not a reality that has to be created. And it's already present to us. Otherwise we wouldn't be able to see it as a result of yoga practice. So this is not an evolutionary goal in the sense of depending upon a new species to manifest it. It's an evolutionary goal in the sense of what can already be achieved by this species. And he does say some things that indicate that that's what it is, because he says that this seed of the new creation is not dependent upon a physical instrument. So it's there for us to achieve already. So I will continue with the next two sections. As one who sets his sail towards mysteried shores, driven through huge oceans by the breath of God, the fathomless below, the unknown around, his soul abandoned the blind star-filled space. Afar from all that makes the measured world, plunging to hidden eternities, it withdrew back from mind's foaming surface to the vasts, voiceless within us, in omniscient sleep. Above the imperfect reach of word and thought, beyond the sight that seeks support of form, lost in deep tracts of superconscient light, or voyaging in blank, featureless nothingness. Soul in the trackless, incommensurable, or past not self and selflessness, transgressing the dream shores of conscious mind, he reached at last his sempiternal base. On sorrowless heights, no winging cry disturbs. Pure and untouched, above this mortal play, is spread the Spirit's hushed, immobile air. There no beginning is, and there no end. There is the stable force of all that moves. There the aeonic laborer is at rest. There turns no keyed creation in the void, no giant mechanism watched by a soul. There creaks no fate-turned huge machinery. The marriage of evil with good within one breast, the clash of strife in the very clasp of love, the dangerous pain of life's experiment in the values of inconsequence and chance, the peril of mind's gamble, throwing our lives as stake in a wager of indifferent gods, and the shifting lights and shadows of the idea falling upon the surface consciousness, and in the dream of a mute witness soul creating the error of a half-seen world where knowledge is a seeking ignorance, life steps a stumbling series without suit, its aspect of fortuitous design, its equal measure of the true and false, in that immobile and immutable realm find no access, no cause, no right to live. There only reigns the Spirit's motionless power, poised in itself through still eternity, and its omniscient and omnipotent peace. Thought clashes not with thought, and truth with truth. There is no There is no war of right with rival right. There are no stumbling and half-seeing lives, passing from chance to unexpected chance. No suffering of hearts compelled to beat in bodies of the inert inconscience make. Armed with the immune, occult, unsinking fire, the guardians of eternity keep its law forever fixed upon truth's giant base, in her magnificent and termless home. There nature, on her dumb spiritual couch, immutably transcendent, knows her source. And to the stir of multitudinous worlds assents, unmoved, in a perpetual calm, all causing, all sustaining, and aloof. The witness looks from his unshaken poise, an eye immense regarding all things done, apart, at peace, above creation's stir, immersed in the eternal altitudes, he abode, defended in his shoreless self, companioned only by the all-seeing One. A mind too mighty to be bound by thought, a life too boundless for the play in space, a soul without borders, unconvinced of time. He felt the extinction of the world's long pain. He became the unborn self that never dies. He joined the sessions of infinity. On the cosmic murmur, primal loneliness fell. Annulled was the contact formed with time-born things. Empty grew nature's wide community. All things were brought back to their formless seed. The world was silent for a cyclic hour. Although the afflicted nature he had left maintained beneath him her broad, numberless fields, her enormous act, receding, failed, remote, as if a soulless dream at last had ceased. No voice came down from the high silences, none answered from her desolate solitudes. A stillness of cessation reigned. The wide immortal hush before the gods are born. A universal force awaited, mute, the veiled transcendence' ultimate decree. Then suddenly there came a downward look. As if a sea exploring its own depths. A living oneness widened at its core and joined him to unnumbered multitudes. A bliss, a light, a power, a flame-white force. A bliss, a light, a power, a flame-white force, caught all into a soul immense embrace. Existence found its truth on oneness's breast, and each became the self and space of all. The great world rhythms were heartbeats of one soul. To feel was a flame discovery of God. All mind was a single harp of many strings. All life a song of many meeting lives. For worlds were many, but the self was one. This knowledge now was made a cosmos's seed. This seed was cased in the safety of the light. It needed not a sheath of ignorance. Then, from the trance of that tremendous clasp, and from the throbbings of that single heart, and from the naked spirit's victory, a new and marvelous creation rose. Incalculable outflowing infinitudes, laughing out an unmeasured happiness, lived their innumerable unity. Worlds where the being is unbound and wide, bodied unthinkably the egoless self. Rapture of beatific energies join time to the timeless, poles of a single joy. White vasts were seen where all is wrapped in all. There were no contraries, no sundered parts. All by spiritual links were joined to all and bound indissolubly to the one. Each was unique, but took all lives as its own. And following out these tones of the infinite, recognized in himself the universe. A splendid center of infinity's whirl, pushed to its zenith height, its last expanse, felt the divinity of its own self-bliss, repeated in its numberless other selves. It took up tirelessly into its scope persons and figures of the impersonal, as if prolonging in a ceaseless count, in a rapturous multiplication sum, the recurring decimals of eternity. None was apart, none lived for himself alone. Each lived for God in him and God in all. Each soulness inexpressibly held the whole. Their oneness was not tied to monotone. It showed 1,000 aspects of itself. Its calm, immutable stability upbore on a changeless ground, forever safe, compelled to a spontaneous servitude, the ever-changing, incalculable steps, the seeming reckless dance's subtle plan of immense world forces in their perfect play. Appearance looked back to its hidden truth and made of difference oneness's smiling play. It made all persons fractions of the unique, yet all were being's secret integers. All struggle was turned to a sweet strife of love in the harmonized circle of a sure embrace. Identities reconciling happiness gave a rich security to difference. On a meeting line of hazardous extremes, the game of games was played to its breaking point, where through self-finding by divine self-loss, there leaps out unity's supreme delight, whose blissful undivided sweetness feels a communality of the absolute. There was no sob of suffering anywhere. Experience ran from point to point of joy. Bliss was the pure, undying truth of things. All nature was a conscious front of God. A wisdom worked in all, self-moved, self-sure, a plenitude of illimitable light, an authenticity of intuitive truth, a glory and passion of creative force. Infallible, leaping from eternity, the moment's thought inspired the passing act. A word, a laughter sprang from silence's breast, a rhythm of beauty in the calm of space, a knowledge in the fathomless heart of time. All turn to all, without reserves recoil. A single ecstasy without a break. Love was a close and thrilled identity in the throbbing heart of all that luminous life. A universal vision that unites. A sympathy of nerve replying to nerve. Hearing that listens to thought's inner sound and follows the rhythmic meanings of the heart. A touch that needs not hands to feel, to clasp. Were there the native means of consciousness and heightened the intimacy of soul with soul. A grand orchestra of spiritual powers, a diapason of soul interchange, harmonized a oneness deep, immeasurable. In these new worlds projected, he became a portion of the universal gaze, a station of the all-inhabiting light, a ripple on a single sea of peace. His mind answered to countless communing minds. His words were syllables of the cosmos's speech. His life a field of the vast cosmic stir. He felt the footsteps of a million wills moving in unison to a single goal. A stream ever newborn that never dies, caught in its thousandfold currents' ravishing flow, with eddies of immortal sweetness thrilled, he bore, coiling through his members as they passed, calm movements of interminable delight, the bliss of a myriad myriads who are one. in this vast outbreak of perfection's law, imposing its fixity on the flux of things. He saw a hierarchy of lucent planes, infifed to this highest kingdom of God's state, attuning to one truth, their own right rule, attuning to one truth, their own right rule, each housed the gladness of a bright degree, alone in beauty, perfect in self-kind, an image cast by one deep truth's absolute, married to all in happy difference. Each gave its powers to help its neighbor's parts, but suffered no diminution by the gift. Profiteers of a mystic interchange, they grew by what they took and what they gave. All others they felt as their own complements, one in the might and joy of multitude. Even in the poise where oneness draws apart, to feel the rapture of its separate selves, the soul in its solitude yearned towards the all, and the many turned to look back at the one. And all revealing, all creating bliss, seeking for forms to manifest truths divine, aligned in their significant mystery, the gleams of the symbols of the ineffable, blazoned like hues upon a colorless air, on the white purity of the witness soul. These hues were the very prism of the Supreme, His beauty, power, delight, creation's cause. A vast truth consciousness took up these signs to pass them on to some divine child heart that looked on them with laughter and delight, and joyed in these transcendent images, living and real as the truths they house. The Spirit's white neutrality became a playground of miracles, a rendezvous for the secret powers of a mystic timelessness. It made of space a marvel house of God. It poured through time its works of ageless might, unveiled, seen as a luring, rapturous face, the wonder and beauty of its love and force. The eternal goddess moved in her cosmic house, sporting with God as a mother with her child. To him, the universe was her bosom of love. His toys were the immortal verities. All here, self-lost, had there its divine place. The powers that here betray our hearts and err were there, sovereign in truth, perfect in joy, masters in a creation without flaw, possessors of their own infinitude. Their mind, a splendid sun of vision's rays, shaped substance by the glory of its thoughts, and moved amidst the grandeur of its dreams. Imagination's great ensorceling rod summoned the unknown and gave to it a home. outspread luxuriantly in golden air, truth's iris-colored wings of fantasy, or sang to the intuitive heart of joy wonder's dream notes that bring the real close. Its power that makes the unknowable near and true, in the temple of the ideal shrined the one. It peopled thought and mind and happy sense, filled with bright aspects of the might of God and living persons of the One Supreme, the speech that voices the ineffable, the ray revealing unseen presences, the virgin forms through which the formless shines, the word that ushers divine experience, and the ideas that crowd the infinite. There was no gulf between the thought and fact. Ever they replied like bird to calling bird. The will obeyed the thought, the act the will. There was a harmony woven twixt soul and soul, a marriage with eternity divinized time. There life pursued, unwearied of her sport, joy in her heart and laughter on her lips, the bright adventure of God's game of chance. In her ingenious ardor of caprice, in her transfiguring mirth, she mapped on time a fascinating puzzle of events, lured at each turn by new vicissitudes to self-discovery that could never cease. Ever she framed stark bonds for the will to break, brought new creations for the thought's surprise, and passionate ventures for the heart to dare, where truth recurred with an unexpected face, or else repeated old familiar joy like the return of a delightful rhyme. At hide and seek, on a mother wisdom's breast, an artist teeming with her world idea, she never could exhaust its numberless thoughts and vast adventure into thinking shapes and trial and lure of a new living's dreams. Untired of sameness and untired of change, endlessly she unrolled her moving act, a mystery drama of divine delight, a living poem of world ecstasy, a kakemono of significant forms, a coiled perspective of developing scenes, a brilliant chase of self-revealing shapes, an ardent hunt of soul looking for soul, a seeking and a finding as of God's. There, matter is the spirit's firm density, an artistry of glad outwardness of self, a treasure house of lasting images where sense can build a world of pure delight, the home of a perpetual happiness. It lodged the hours as in a pleasant inn. The senses there were outlets of the soul. even the youngest child thought of the mind incarnated some touch of highest things. Their substance was a resonant harp of self, a net for the constant lightnings of the spirit, a magnet power of love's intensity, whose yearning throb and adoration's cry drew God's approaches close, sweet, wonderful. Its solidity was a mass of heavenly make. Its fixity and sweet permanence of charm made a bright pedestal for felicity. Its bodies, woven by a divine sense, prolonged the nearness of soul's clasp with soul. Its warm play of external sight and touch reflected the glow and thrill of the heart's joy. Minds climbing brilliant thoughts, the spirit's bliss. Life's rapture kept forever its flame and cry. All that now passes lived immortal there, in the proud beauty and fine harmony of matter plastic to spiritual light. Its ordered hours proclaimed the eternal law. Vision reposed on a safety of deathless forms. Time was eternity's transparent robe. An architect hewing out self's living rock, phenomenon built reality's summer house on the beaches of the sea of infinity.